Hi there, Paul Thompson here from Spitfire Audio. In this video we're going to look at the Woodwinds section of the BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin. Let's start with the solo flute. So as you can hear there, it's very agile. You can just kind of play. It reacts to staccato playing, just kind of very quick little stabs at the notes. But equally very kind of lyrical playing, and you can also use the dynamic and vibrato controls here. Now, as you can see, we're listening to mix 1 here, which is the default mix. This is Jake's kind of realistic general purpose orchestra mix, and there are a couple of other mixes, but we'll go into that shortly. First of all, let's have a quick listen to some of the other articulations with the solo flute. The usual things like our kind of trills, dynamically controllable again. And then things like staccatissimo, very short staccatos. A slightly longer short note, tenuto style. And then the more rounded attack, but a slightly bigger attack for the marcatos. And if you want the marcatos to be shorter, you just lift your fingers up. Then we've got things like the flutter tongue, which we really love. Again, this is dynamically controllable. And finally, our multi-tongue patch, which enables you to play realistic sounding multiple tonguing. You can hear that's a double tongue, but if we go to the variation slider here and go up to halfway, we can find a triple tongue. And also all the way around takes us to the quad tongue. And if you play harder on the keyboard, you get an accented final note there. So let's move on to the 3 flutes patch and see how that changes. Obviously, once you've got 3 players playing together, you get a very different sound in the room, but that sounds like this. So here is our kind of basic long note. Of course, our trills sound different with 3 players. And then we have our staccattissimos. Now, these are a good opportunity with a short note to check out some of the different miking options. So that was mix 1. So let's put up mix 2, which is the slightly more hyped mix. You can hear there it's a bit more present and a bit more aggressive. We've got the close mic, decatry and the outriggers, which is that classic kind of filmic room sound there. The close wide, which is basically all of the close mics on the section spread across the stereo field. Now that's incredibly useful if you want something that's very tight and dry sounding, but also covering the full width of the stereo field. for these sections. Obviously, for the soloist, it's a single mic because you only have one mic on a soloist. But for these sections, you have the full width of the stereo field. And that means that you can literally just pan the sound exactly where you want. You can use stage positioning plugins to kind of place the sound in different places. You can do all kinds of creative stuff with that one. The stereo is another interesting miking choice. Slightly more distant, and then for the real further distant sound, the mids. And then beyond that, we have our kind of spill mics and going through to the Atmos front and rear presentations as well. So there's a lot of different kind of choices, options in there for you to make use of. Let's go back to Mix 1 as a good kind of reference point and just have a quick flick through the rest of the articulations. Again, you can just shorten the note as before. And again, on multi-tongue. So you get the idea. It's an interesting difference between the single flute and the three flutes. You get a kind of slightly thicker sound. It doesn't articulate quite as clearly because obviously you've got three players all playing, and even though they're very tight, it's just a different sound. So let's move on and look at the piccolo. And again, we start with our legato patch, and this is similarly to the flute. In this kind of extended presentation, it's got the short notes, and you're also able to play very fast. So we've got similar articulations to the flute. Let's check out a couple of my favourites on here. We've got a flutter is actually fantastic on this. That'll loosen your fillings. And then we've got some different stuff on here, rips and falls. We can change these with the variation slider as before. So let's put that all the way up to the top. And you can hear a longer rip. And similarly with the falls, we've got a shorter version. And then if we push the variation up to the top, we've got that kind of longer version with a bit more of a kind of accent on the front. Let's jump across to the oboe. Here I love the multi-tongues with the solo oboe. Just they're beautifully crisp. In fact, let's have a quick look at the legato as well on it. I'm going to ride the dynamics and the vibrato, and you can hear how lyrical this is. So it's really great for writing those kind of really lyrical lines. The trills are great. So the sound of three oboes together, very kind of typical orchestral setup to have three of the woodwind players. And this is a nice sound as well. So a good kind of range of colour there. And again, very agile patch. So clarinet is a big favourite of mine, being a clarinetist. Staccatissimo's are lovely. And we've got, again, a nice agile legato here. Very beautiful. With our marcatos, they have that kind of great... I can't think of a better way of explaining it. It's a rounded attack. It's not It's not the aggressive attack that you get with a kind of sforzando or something like that. It's that lovely, lovely kind of round, stately sort of feel. The flutter tongue is really lovely on this as well. Multi-tongues, of course, again, which are particularly useful. But you can, you know, if you want to play everything in, they're just a nice, useful alternative to, which is slightly harder to do. That's all. Let's have a quick listen to the close, what we call the close wide mic. Obviously with this, it's a soloist, so there's a single mic, but it's still a very useful, sound because you've got that real intimacy and it sounds very, very dry. There's just the merest of hints of the studio scoring stage that you're in. Let's go back to mix 1. And let's check out the longs flutter with the 3 clarinets, just jumping around here and mixing it up a bit. So that's a really lovely sound because you don't hear the complete definition of the flutter tongue, but what you get is almost like a kind of textural sound instead. It doesn't give you the, it's not shouting, I am a flutter tongue at you. It's just a slightly different texture. Once you've got other instruments going around that, you'll find that very useful, I think. Let's have a quick listen to the legato. Our longs, of course, just to play a single note and hear those 3 clarinets, or you can just use it as a textural sound and play. And of course the trills are great and dynamically controllable as well. So moving forward, we're at the bassoons. So that again is a lovely lyrical sound. I do particularly like low textures with these bassoons. Very useful sound. Obviously the trills. And flutter on the bassoons is actually a really great sound as well. Not quite as dynamic as some of the other flutter tongues, but that's the nature of the beast. You can't check out the bassoon without listening to the staccatissimo, of course. So that's a great little sound. Let's try and change it up and listen to something different. So that's the tenuto, the staccatissimo. And again, let's just have a quick listen to this close wide on this staccatissimo. So once you're right up against the section like that, then you're hearing the individual players. It's quite interesting. It's a really useful sound there. So contrabass clarinet. You know, it's great for doing these kind of low sounds and also the long note, where you really get that kind of depth and rattle down there. But it's fantastic, as an extra instrument to use with maybe the bassoons as a low part. It's quite agile down there. Let's jump forward to the bass clarinet just to compare. And we've also got the contrabassoon. Now the contrabassoon is the lowest, and it goes down even below the basses of the string section. But as before, can still be kind of lyrical. Although it takes a little bit longer to kind of get going. I guess there's a much bigger column of air to start the vibrations in. And you can really hear that when you listen to the marcatos down the bottom. You know, you've really got that that kind of weight behind it, but also it's almost the flutter tongue when you get right down to the bottom. You almost can't distinguish it from the kind of the timbre of the actual instrument itself. Finally, the Cor Anglais. It does sound great used in a kind of choral sense as well. And it sounds kind of like this. It's got that kind of lovely double reedy-ness, but it also sounds a little bit clarinetty as well, because it's just got that slightly more mellow sound than the oboe. But it's a lovely sound, and you can kind of hear the character of it in the trills as well. So that's a brief look through the Woodwinds section of the BBC Symphony Orchestra plugin. There are lots of other videos on the website, lots more information, and also videos linked below. Subscribe if you haven't already, click that bell icon and you'll be notified the next time we put a video up. Thank you very much for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye-bye.